This is WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana, and you are watching When It Was Real with noted wrestling historian, author, actor, and wrestling manager Nikita Breznikov, and pro wrestling author and podcaster Benny Scala, found only on the Playa Entertainment Network. Arriba!
Arriba. Yeah, that's
it. Good evening, folks, and welcome back to When It Was Real, the show that celebrates the glory days of the WWWF in the 70s, when professional wrestling was very real to us. Now, I'm Benny Scala, a.k.a. The Playa, a former porn star trying to stay relevant, but this guy, he's the real deal. He is the one, the only Nikita Breznikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
Good evening.
That was very Alfred Hitchcock-esque.
Oh, yes. We love the Hitch.
Yeah, it started with that music, and then you had the profile with his big old belly hanging out.
But, you know, he took a page out of Stanislavski, one of the great acting teachers of all time. He put comedy into horror. Not Three Stooges, just a little comedy, just enough to keep it lighthearted.
Enough to make you smile in between gasps, right?
Yeah. Sort of like what wrestling does at times.
You know what? Good point. You know, Nikita, last week, that show with Dr. Frank, that was epic. I am still smiling. What a character. What a great guy. You know, he's a national treasure. That expression, they broke the mold after the good Lord created, that applies for sure.
Well, his sincerity is there too. He really meant what he said. He would love us to come and do a show, you know, with that museum that he has, for lack of a better word. It's a damn museum. So it's like, all right, we're going to work towards that, people. For our fans, we have to.
I mean, just out of curiosity, I want to see this place. It looks like, like going to a Hall of Fame.
The basement, you know, it's a regular house. Kind of looks like the Brady Bunch house when you first pull up. Not that I was a big fan, but, you know, I saw their place. They would always do a establishing shot of the house. And then it was like, okay, that's what Frank's place looks like. But then you go in and it's like the garden, you know, it's like, what the hell, man, this thing is just like a bunker almost. It's kind of neat.
Where is his office down there too, where he treats patients?
No, he's on the upper level, actually.
Okay. All right. And then, so the museum or whatever you want to call it is downstairs.
Yes. The treatment rooms are down there too, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Nikita, by popular demand, it's as Yogi Berra said, deja vu all over again. We're going to talk about tag teams, which you did a couple of months ago, but people are asking for it again. So we're going to give it another shot, maybe put a new spin on it or two.
Yes. Now, as I explained, on my page at least, and I did send it to our good friends, Pete Pingle is handling the WWF 1970 to 83 page. We got a great flow from that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I said, look, you know, we switched networks. So a lot of the shows that we previously did, people can't find them. So it's like, you know what? We can't go back and do everything again. I mean, that's not practical. But this one we can. And we did ask, and the response was good. Very, yeah, please do it. But to me, it's kind of like championship wrestling. You know, they did the A show and then All-Star Wrestling, the B show. It's the same, yet different. You're getting the content, and sometimes you just mix the two. And yeah, I think we'll do a great job.
Maybe somebody missed the other one, so they can, you know, for them it'll be fresh.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess first things first, do our customary toast.
Yes.
Should we toast? Who should we toast? The great tag teams of the past?
Yes, because what a big part of our lives that was, the tag team title and just watching the tag team matches, even on the card, it meant so much. So absolutely, to everybody from the Kangaroos all the way on down the line, thank you so much. There you go.
You know, that's such a good point, though, Nikita. You know, we didn't see Bruno wrestle on TV too much, or Pedro, but we saw those tag teams almost every week. Great tag team matches.
It wasn't a law, but usually you were going to see a tag title change on television.
Right.
So, that kept you going. And I think also you had to draw an audience. So it was like, okay, they always gave a dark match. And that was usually stellar, something decent, say like Chief against Von Erich or something of that nature where people wanted to see it. But this way, you never knew you're going to see in that 3-hour taping something that nobody else is going to get until it hits their market and it hits the air. But the tag team title could change. Of course, when the new faces would come in, you'd be the first place to see them.
Right.
Yep, about every 6 months, man. You better
got a good point.
Very
Hello,
good.
Jane.
And thank you,
before we
Jane.
forget.
You are you are a treasure to us. We
love you, Jane.
Yes, Jane, you're the best.
Well, let's go to the beginning real quick, Nikita. These guys, the very first wrestlers that actually intimidated me, the Mongols.
Hey, that guy looks like Nikolai Volkov.
Just a little bit, yeah.
All right, here's the deal, people. Back in 1970, Madison Square Garden was not running monthly yet. Can you believe that? It was not running monthly. And on January the 19th of 1970, get this, the then international tag team champions of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, Victor Rivera and Tony Marino, they beat Killer Kowalski and Waldo Von Erich. What a team! Can you believe that?
Wow.
I mean, that should be enough to strike terror in the hearts of anybody. It's like, there's no way in hell I'd go up against Kowalski and Von Erich. Man, oh man. There you go. So then the Mongols, they come in, they make their debut at the Garden June 15th of 1970, and they beat Rivera and Marino. And when you saw them, their manager was Tony Angelo. He was kind of a short, rotund guy. He would wear a bowler from time to time. And he wasn't as active and vocal as, say, Freddie or Lou Albano, which at the time, we only really had Lou Albano. The Wizard really didn't come yet till another year, in 71. And so it was like Lou was really just about getting his feet wet in the Federation.
Right.
So he comes in with Tony Angelo, the Mongols do. And I mean, Nikolai, he was 19 years old. I mean, can you imagine that? Here he stood almost 6'4", not quite, but almost 6'4", 345 pounds. And Guido was no small guy himself. So it was like, wow. And those furs are real. They belonged to the Nikolai. He brought them with him. And,
really? Okay.
Yes. And we'll tell the story real quick. They were with Mike Scaluna. They were somewhere coming from Pittsburgh. And it was one of those nights, snow all over the friggin' place. And they couldn't get a hotel. Everything was either like closed or they were full. So Nikolai says, look, you guys sleep front seat, back seat. And they said, well, where the hell are you going to sleep? I sleep in the trunk. I have the furs. They're like, are you nuts? He's like, no problem. And for him, coming from Croatia, out in the wilderness, it was no problem. So he gets in the trunk with the furs. So the next morning, state patrol's tapping on the window and say, hey, you guys okay? And it's like, yeah. We had to camp out. They couldn't get a place. We're okay, but you better check on the guy in the trunk. And he's like, the trunk? So they opened up the trunk, and there's Nikolai. Good morning, officer. It's like, holy shit. Well, Beppo at the time, of course. So they win. It was 2 out of 3 falls. Back then, a tag team match, especially at an arena, you could easily see a 45-minute match. That was not unusual. And it was a gimmick back in the earlier days, like the 50s, even into the 60s. Like the midgets or the women, no disrespect to either, but to the promoters, they were trying to reel us in. They figured, okay, what else can we do? I guess they didn't get the word that we just loved what we were watching, because some people use it as a catharsis to figure, that's like the boss, or in some cases, the husband or the wife or whoever you hated in your life that was getting the shit beat out of them. And it's like, I just love the characters. That did it for me. I was happy. So they figured they'd come up with this idea, tag team wrestling. They came up with Australian style tag team wrestling. Like, we never did get a disclosure as what the hell that meant, but okay, sounded good. So, here they are. First fall, missed cannonball by Victor. Guido gets the pin. Then the sleeper on Guido by Victor puts him down. Then in the third fall, Marino gets the double team. Nikolai gives him that famous stomp. And then he covers him, gets the 3 count, and it's clean. No bullshit, no foot on the ropes, no chairs, foreign objects. They wanted them to look strong. They being the promotion, of course, not just Vince Sr., but all of the other partners of Capital Wrestling. They knew they had something here. And by the way, that was a sellout. It was the first sellout in the garden, the new garden. And it was like, from that point on, this is where we see the Worldwide Wrestling Federation start to take off. Now, a quick disclaimer, again, that was the International Tag Team Championship for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. So, but nevertheless, this is one of the belts that Monsoon and Tanaka held and all kinds of other fantastic teams. So it's like, fine. But this would be the last team to hold the belt, because let me stop 1 second, though. They did establish a protocol, because Nikolai said, we would be last. A lot of time they would be main event, Bruno and Chief or whoever that go up against them. And when they tried to get out of the buildings, people would be waiting to kill them. I mean, truly do them harm. Not just like, hey, give them a tongue lashing or, some silly shit like that. They were trying to hurt them. So they went to the old man and they said, look, you can't do this. You got to get us out early. So, people are staying to watch some other match and we can sneak out the back. So they kind of established that. But then it was right after Pedro beat Ivan Koloff. There's no real official date, but after that garden date, of course, February the 8th of 71, the Mongols just disappeared. They actually went to Pittsburgh. They bought the Pittsburgh territory. I believe it was owned by Bruno at the time, who I believe Bruno got it from Pedro Martinez. So it was like, great. We're going to, hey, we heard that from, it was Davey, right? Or no, Johnny Rods.
Yeah,
when he said,
Johnny Rods.
Okay, Guido, when you go bring me down there, I'll be Java Rook, and, you put me over big, we'll do all this. And he's like, it was not bad, but didn't make him rich or anything. So, they were happy. They went to Pittsburgh and they flourished. It actually turned out that Beppo teamed with Bruno against Guido and either George Steele or Baron Cicluna. And it was like, can you believe it? Only in wrestling, right? That's the only place where you could see something like that actually happen.
But they made a concerted effort, Nikita, to make them look very strong, because I do remember, I don't know if it was Ray Morgan or Bill Cardill, but one of them mentioned that Nikolai had pinned Bruno during a tag team match, pinned him clean. And when did you ever hear Bruno getting pinned clean?
Well, the only times I heard about it would be in 1975 and then 1976, a month and a half later or 2 months later. But yeah, it wasn't natural. And they would do feats of strength, and they basically would do what is called a squash match, where you don't do anything, no offense. They just pummel you. You'll be paid well for it. You definitely will be reimbursed, and hopefully you can walk home at the end of the night. But yeah, and they got them over huge. And once they were gone, that's where I see the tag team title curse began. So it's like, well, shit, we had a great thing going with this, because people were coming. They wanted to see. Well, and in the meantime, Nikolai wrestled Bruno almost an hour draw. Not quite. It went like 53 minutes, because they wanted Crusher Verdue. They said, well, he was under the time the only one Lou Albano was managing. They wanted him to try to do. He's like, he couldn't do it. He was barrel chested. He didn't have the stamina. So Nikolai said, I could do it. I could last. And it was like, let's give it a try. And they did. And with that, it was, I think that's where the magic began with Nikolai and Bruno. It's just like they work so well together.
Always. Yeah.
It was like, wow, this is really great. Because what was it? I believe it was September the 14th of that year. And it was like they're running the ropes. Boom, they collide. Bruno goes to the outside and he's counted out. And remember, back then they had 4 ropes. They didn't quite, that was a boxing ring. So as Davey O'Hannon has told us and a couple other people through the years, it was brutal to wrestle in one of those cement slabs.
Was that still a 20 count out, Nikita, or was that a...
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. The 10 didn't change until January the 12th of 76, Bruno against Superstar. And it was like, what the hell's going on? No announcement was made because even Vince was like, I'm confused. There's a 20 count for a man on the floor, a 10 count for a man inside the ring. But it just stuck after that. So off we went. So Mongols are gone. So it's like, now what the hell do? We got to fill this. So it's like, well, we don't have, Worldwide Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions. This is a great opportunity. So it was Memorial Day of 71, May 31st. And they said the tournament took place in New Orleans, Louisiana, where Crazy Luke, one of the Graham brothers, and Tarzan Tyler, managed by none other than Captain Lou Albano, beat the team of Dick the Bruiser and the Sheik, the original Sheik. Now, that wasn't so unusual because both men had a history with the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Of course, if we remember Dick the Bruiser going all the way back to the riot that occurred in the Garden, and it was like, he was always a big part of whatever went on. And as this progresses, you'll see another reason how he got to be a part of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. But let me back up one more time. Lou Albano had got the contract of the Mongols from Tony Angelo. Nikolai said the guy lived in Montreal, and it was like, I don't know if his wife was bitching or if he was just tired. And he's like, I'm done. I'm going to get out of this. So they said they made a deal. Lou got Ivan Koloff, and the Mongols and Tony Angelo got Crusher Verdun. It's like, holy shit. What you think Charlie Finley was a great player swapper? It's like, holy mackerel.
That's like Nolan Ryan for Jim Fregosi kind of trade.
Oh yeah, or Fergie Jenkins. It's like, who knew he pitched for the Phillies, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Who did he get traded for?
2 no names. I mean, I saw that just the other day. It was Fergie's birthday, and it was like, oh my God,
Man,
the deal of the century.
A great pitcher. I mean, I got to think a guy like him, what would he be worth nowadays? wins 20 every year. I mean, always in the top like 10 for the Cy Young. He's a $30-40 million a year pitcher. He probably never even sniffed more than a couple $100,000 a year.
It would be like, hey, I want to be part, like George Steele used to say, I want a piece of the action. Put me on the board. It's like, oh yeah, because without me, Jack, you got shit. So
right.
We got new tag team champions. Of course, we don't see anything, but they're still wearing the International Tag Team Championship belts. And Luke always had the thumb. I mean, that may be the longest injury in the history of pro wrestling was Crazy Luke's thumb.
Ernie Ladd and who else?
Ernie Ladd did the thumb.
Pay him royalties for that.
And Don Morocco.
And Morocco too, yeah.
Yes, Don Morocco. So it was like, but with Luke, remember, it was, and I remember reading in a magazine, and it said, "You sons of bitches, don't call me crazy." We were like, they cussed in the magazine. You can't do that. It's like,
yeah.
We were that naive, people, and we were that innocent that for that time period. Is like, son of a bitch was a big thing.
Well, Bruno's biggest swear word was "doggone it," right?
Doggone it, without a doubt.
Doggone it, Vince. Yeah,
doggone it. But Luke Graham, Tarzan Tyler was no chump. I mean, he was a tough man. He was good size. But Crazy Luke would sell that gimmick because the fans would start to chant Crazy Luke, and then he'd be like acting like a goof, kind of like George Steele would do later. But it would distract him. If he had the advantage over one of our favorites, you start chanting Crazy Luke, and then, he drops what he's doing, and then they take over on him. But they both got title matches with Pedro as singles at the Garden and all over the territory. So it's like this again, it was like, okay, not too shabby. We lost the Mongols, but these two are carrying things pretty well. Let them go for a while. So they continue until December the 6th, when Karl Gotch, the one and only great Karl Gotch, teams up with Rene Goulet. Very unusual teaming. In fact, they wrestled against each other the previous month at the Garden. It was a clean scientific match. But whereas you had Tyler and Graham facing teams like Strongbow and Rivera and everybody, Pedro and Chief, and it's like they're selling the houses out because they got heat and people want to see them beaten. Gotch and Goulet was kind of like, well, we're glad they won, because back then you didn't root for the bad guy, as we called him. You just didn't do that.
No.
Everybody, you'd be chased out of the neighborhood, and probably never show your face again. But it was like these two, I think they threw Gotch a bone. Rene Goulet was a good, solid worker and a company man, and everybody liked him. But Gotch, they said, was kind of like a prima donna, kind of like what they would call Mil Mascaras years later. Kind of like, I'm not selling because I know I can break your neck.
He was like close, either 50 or close to 50. He was like, right at the end.
Yeah, it was no young guy. So maybe they said, look, out of respect, let's do this. Let's, make you tag team champion, because there's no way in hell you taking the belt from Pedro. Pedro was still hot, so that was good. Things were going well. They're not going to change anything. It's like, who the hell are you? You're not going to come in here and do that. So, boom, you're tag champion. That didn't last that long. February the 1st, and I love this, Baron Mikel Scaluna and King Curtis Iakea. And it's like, man, now see, people, you talk about Scaluna was a jobber. For the idiots that out there saying that, no, he wasn't. He was no jobber. He was a smart man. He was a main eventer, as you see here, not just with the tag belts. Both Curtis and Scaluna had singles matches with Pedro in the Garden.
I was going to say, Scaluna worked in various arenas with Pedro, correct? Not just the Garden?
Yes, but I mean, that's the epic. You on top at the Garden. Whoa, daddy, that's a lot. So it's like, yeah, the company to get behind you, it's like putting your money in a stock. It's like, this son of a bitch better be good, because we got our money tied up in it. So yeah, main events, and they worked well together. And I love the gimmick with the wristbands. Lou Albano said he would communicate telepathically with King Curtis through the wristbands. It was wild. But here you go again. Scaluna from the 60s. This wasn't their first, neither one of them wasn't their first tour. When he was Prince Curtis Iakea, that's how he was really known in the 60s, wrestling in Madison Square Garden. He had been around for a while. And you look at the guy, both of them, like Scaluna, Bruno said, he back in 1978, Baron was started on the tail end of, he's starting to spin down on his career. And Bruno said they gave him a match against the name we mentioned on the Saturday morning enhancement talent, Fred Marzino. He beat him in under 2 minutes. And he rolled his eyes like, oh my God. But it was nice. It was a little bump for the Baron. But Bruno even said, here's a guy, Vince, through the years. He said, he's never gotten heavy. He's always stayed in tremendous shape. He said he almost looks lean, but believe me, he's powerful, like a Denucci or Kowalski. He's got those long, gangly arms and tendon strength that would probably put I don't know who to shame. Anybody called the world's strongest man is like, put your grip up against those guys because they would compete with you, Daddy.
I told his son Mike, I said he reminded me of a Clydesdale, like very regal and
Good.
not like muscular, but you could tell he was powerful.
And the legs, when you look at the legs, it's like, whoa, like a horse, that's got to carry that huge body. Nikolai, that was his only downfall. And I heard a couple of people say that over the years. His legs didn't seem to match his body. Where Patera, who was a power man, he was well-rounded from top to bottom. You could see, and Tanaka, the same thing, very thick calves. But Nikolai, it's kind of like his bottom half of his physique just didn't seem to match the top half. And it was almost like stilts. But
right.
It was going to tell him that. So, yeah, King Curtis and Baron Cicluna. Now, for some strange reason, there was a match against Strongbow and Sonny King at the Baltimore Civic Center on March 30th of 1972. And this is 72, by the way, people, February the 1st. And it was taped. I don't know why. That was a night when they had more women on the card than men. No disrespect. I'm more than happy to say it was a great event, especially with the beautiful Vicky Williams and Casey was there, all our favorites. And it's like,
absolutely.
But I don't know if they were taping it for that reason, but it was a Tuesday night Titans taping when they used to do that show years ago. And they showed a clip of it on Tuesday Night Titans. And it was from the stage, just like when Bruno loses the superstar. You see that one shot. They're able to zoom the camera in, but nobody's got a handheld. There's no ringside camera. It's just all shot one angle from that stage. And that's what this was. And it looked like a hell of a match. I mean, the pipe. There was always some kind of pipe coming into play with this combination. And usually King Curtis had the pipe, and they hit the Chief with it, and Sonny King came in, and they're going back and forth, and it was well done. They had a lot of heat in that match, but I remember in one of the magazines, I'm going to give George, our good buddy George Napolitano, the credit on this one. I'm not positive, but I like to lean towards George. There was an article. It was a matchup in Boston. And you can always tell from the photos that it was Boston because of the long stairs that they had. It looked like 6 steps to get into the damn ring, so they must have been high off the ground. But it was like, who brought the knife into the ring? It was a small plastic knife. It was Strongbow against King Curtis. Big controversy. Is like, wow. But we love that. It's like, yeah, man, I wish I could have been there for that. Well, Chief had a cane, and they were using everything that wasn't nailed down. But there's Lou Albano starting his dynasty. Now, this is his 3rd team because you got to count the Mongols. Lou always did. Even though they were international tag champions, Lou always counted the Mongols in his repertoire of.
Why not?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Who knew different, really? But Gotch and Goulet were the first one to wear those type belts that we're seeing now, the oval shape. They were the first ones to wear them. And then, of course, it passed down through each team. The background changed on the belt. The strap itself, sometimes it would be red, sometimes green, sometimes black. But it would not become a different style until Tony Garea and Rick Martel in 1981. When it became like a smaller plate in the middle. Still sharp-looking belt, but I love these the best. I really do. Even for the heavyweight champions, I thought that was the best-looking belt. It really had style, and it had a sense of class to it, especially with those plates on the side. It beat that gaudy thing that Backlund carried at the end and that Hogan eventually got. The Sheik and then Hogan. It's like, it fell apart, apparently, I'm told. And that's why a friend of mine, Dominic Marcello, he says Hogan gave it to him because it was just garbage at that point. And did it mean anything to these guys? No, not really. Chief had his belt. They said Vince used to give them a senior and then junior a complimentary belt that they would keep, but obviously you would not keep the original belt. And as we'll get into the Lumberjacks later, you hardly ever saw them carrying the belts. And that bothered me. It's like, you're the tag team champions. Why the hell aren't you wearing the belts?
Absolutely, of course.
You know? So they lose. This combination loses on May 22nd to Strongbow and Sonny King, who we thought we were over the moon for them. What a great combination. They win at Madison Square Garden. So, here you go. You got 2 times now champions have won at the Garden, 3 if you count the Mongols, and then the others are on television. And that's a famous shot with Chili Willie. And they were very colorful, the Chief and Sonny King. And the night they won, Monsoon was supposed to wrestle Albano, but Monsoon couldn't make it for whatever reason. So Chief he pulled a double that night. And that's when it began, that put a face in the ring with Lou Albano. It could be the champion. It could be any good face that the crowd's behind, and just let him murder Lou. And that's what happened. Lou was bloodied from top to bottom. And I think then they realized, hey, we got $1 million maker here. Because as the years would progress, you could give the rest of the boys the night off and you'd still have a sellout. Just say Bruno against Lou Albano or Chief against Lou Albano. And here they come. They want to see this guy murdered.
I mean, how many times did they go to that well? I mean,
we loved it every time.
Never got tired of it, right?
No. And you got to give Lou all the credit in the world. He was not shy. He did not hesitate. It wasn't like some people, give it a little bit here and then you got to squeeze it out. Lou was like a mental case. As I've said before, when he came to the Garden to wrestle Jimmy Snuka on Snuka's face return, November the 20th, or first face appearance, his return to wrestling after the pile driver with Stevens, November 22nd, 1982, and he's going to wrestle Lou Albano because he wants to get back at Albano. Of course, the whole building is there. Superstar against Bob Backlund in a rematch was the main event, but everybody, you knew why they were there. They wanted to see this. And Lou, in the middle of the thing, he drops the blade. And he's actually on the mat. He's already cut to shreds. It's like, Lou, you did a good enough job. See, because Monsoon was doing the color at that time. That was the first time he did with Vincent. They're like, look at Albano. He's disoriented. It's like he's dropped something. And, Monsoon, he said, maybe he lost his wristwatch, Vince. Looking for his watch. Then he goes into that tunic he was wearing. And they said, oh, look out. Albano pulling something out of that tunic. It was a straight razor. And it's like, holy shit. Because they said the old man had he had 3 heart attacks and a stroke that night. And he's like, Lou, what the hell are you trying to do? Lose the Garden? The state athletic commission's there. It's bad enough. They kind of turn a blind eye to the blood. They're not that stupid. But this is like, come on now. You're tickling their ass here. You got to cut that shit out. And, Lou was in his own world. And it's like, they're not going to get rid of him. But it was great. Everybody loved it. So back to these two, they did not get along. Chief did not like King, and King did not like Chief. And Sonny King apparently felt like he was the show. So Chief told me personally, face to face, eye to eye. He said, I told the old man, you book him up in Bangor. Don't put me on the card. Put him on top. You pick who. And then the next month, you put me on top and see how we do. And it was clear cut without a doubt. No title match, just, singles against one of the top heels. And Sonny King, that was it. 1 month. June 27th, Tanaka and Fuji beat them on television for the belts. Was it a month, Benny? May 22nd? No, not quite a month. Oh, yeah, just a little bit.
I think 36 days they had the belts.
Yeah, a hair over the month timeline, and that was it.
Well, but Nikita, Sonny King was relatively new to the business. I mean, did he just think too much of himself at that point?
Not new to the business, new to the area.
No. Okay, he was established in the business though?
Yes. And he would go against Ernie Ladd in Baltimore. He teamed up with Bobo. And other partners, but he and Chief just did not click together. So he didn't just disappear. He stayed around for a while, but
He
then it
became
was
a
like,
pretty good heel down south somewhere.
I saw that in the magazines. I've never seen a match with him in that capacity as a
I
heel.
think mostly as a manager, I believe.
Well, you know what? It's like baseball. And not to say that Sonny King didn't have talent, but in baseball, a lot of the worst players were great managers. And some of the good,
And vice
Martin was
versa,
no
right?
slouch. Yeah, and Billy Martin was no slouch, but he was a hell of a manager. But Earl Weaver was the shits as a player, but probably, I'll say, the greatest
Same with
manager of all time.
Walter Alston, Lasorda, you know.
You had Preston Gomez. You go right on down the line as like Darrell Johnson was a catcher with the Red Sox manager. I had no idea. It's like, what the hell? I didn't know anything about the
Now
guy.
Ted Williams, though, I think he did have one good season as the manager of the Senators, didn't he?
Not really. Not
No?
really, buddy. They were fair, even when they went to Texas. And it was like, I remember 69 very well, and Ted's first year as their manager. And they didn't have a shabby team. Frank Howard and Mike Epstein was like, son of a bitch. That's a 1-2 punch and a half. And they had some supplements, that carry them, Ken McMullen, different players, but it was like, and they just couldn't get it done. Even with the famous Dick Williams, it just did not get done. Or Ted Williams.
Ted Williams, yeah.
And I remember the day he died, Ted Williams, because it's the day I had my prostate cancer surgery. So I'm laying in the hospital. That's every 10 minutes they're showing, and Ted Williams is gone. Ted Williams is gone, and it's like, wow, that was something. And then his son became Mr. Freeze, and they put his body in ice or some kind of crazy shit like that.
Yeah, that was huge controversy with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to work. He's gone. I mean, you can keep him on ice, but the man's gone. That's the end of the line.
I remember that, Greg. Yes, that's what I was thinking about. Like Slick.
Yeah, I remember seeing Slick when Freddie was done. Freddie was like, I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. And they brought in Slick, and Nikolai and Sheik was his first team. And it was like, I wasn't really that deep into it at that point. They had lost me. They were getting to be kind of silly with their cartoonish shit. And I even saw how the matches had changed. As late 83 was on the horizon, there was a lot of stalling before two guys they'd be in the ring for 7 minutes before they fucking touched each other. And it's like, what the hell is this shit? Go get them, man. Let's have a match,
Really.
So that was going to be the new style. They were going to reprogram the fans. And they did it, and they made a lot of money, but they lost a lot of us too. So, okay, Sonny King and Chief J Strongbow lose to, I'm going to say, the number 2 team of all time.
Yes.
Professor Turo Tanaka and Mr. Fuji. My God. And apparently, as the story goes, Bruno found the professor when he was wrestling throughout his world tour. I think he may have seen the professor in Australia, and he came back home and he said, hey, you got to get this guy here. I mean, he could rival me in strength. He looks like he could walk through the brick wall, and he's got the martial arts. And then they were like, okay, they brought him east. And in like the late 60s, Professor Tanaka was all over Madison Square Garden with Bruno. Then, of course, he comes back and he says, hey, I have another guy. You can make a team. And they're both Hawaiian people, Harry Fujiwara and Charlie Kalani.
Charlie Kalani, right? Wasn't he? Charlie Kalani was in the United States Army, wasn't he?
He was a pistol champion for United States Army.
Okay,
yes.
There you go.
Yes, because Nikolai said one time he and Professor went to a crab feast, and they left extra money. But they're like, oh my God, those two, they must have ate 20 bushels of crabs. Because Professor was on an airplane one time, and there was a hijacker. And he said, I could take care, but I was afraid maybe somebody got hurt and then they sue me. So he said, I just sat down, didn't do nothing. And if he got too close, I'd have to do it. But I always liked him with the Cobra. That was one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
But What the wonderful guy. Went on to work with Chuck Norris in the 80s in a lot of the Chuck Norris movies. And when you see a guy like Professor Tanaka wearing civilian clothes, and I believe he didn't have a tie because there's no way he probably choked to death. You can't fit him with a tie. So he had a jacket over like a, nice dress shirt or whatever. But you could see then he looks like a tank. And it's like, holy shit, who would Chuck Norris? I think I never seen any of the movies. I wasn't a big Chuck Norris fan. I more into Bruce Lee, and it was like, I guess it was like, what the fuck do I do now? Somebody get me a gun. There's no way. And Professor, he could do the back kick, spin kick, every kind of kick. And at this stage, 1972, he would do a demonstration breaking cement blocks with his forehead. Of course, he's breaking the boards, no problem. Kick, chop, everything through 4 or 5 boards, whatever. Fuji, not so much, but Professor, that Fuji would do it later. He would demonstrate that he would be just as equal. He was a great tag wrestler. He held the belts in the 60s. Mitsu Arakawa, that was his cousin, and people knew him from James Bond. Odd Job with the hat. That was the same person, Mitsu.
Yeah.
Professor's cousin. Because a lot of times people say that was Professor Tanaka. No, it wasn't. But Peter Maeva, he was in a James Bond movie. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I think it's You Only Live Twice. It was the beginning. He didn't have like a long role, but he doesn't speak, but it's him. He fights James Bond, and I think they try to get him in the car masher. And it's like, that's Peter Maeva, without a doubt. And, then years later, somebody covered it in a magazine, and it's like, that's him, the High Chief, without a doubt. Hey, Hollywood is the shits. They're so fucking stupid. They should have been bringing these guys in more often and say, my God. Yeah, like you told the story about George Steele. And when he was on the set of Ed Wood, and they were like, can he
do you
act?
have any acting experience? And Bill Murray said, yeah, this man's been acting his whole life.
Yeah, it put you guys to shame. You bring these fucking goofy acting coaches in. It's like, go to hell. Go sit down and play with yourself. Let me show you how it's done, jerk. And it's like, yeah, these guys, the angles that they would run. Yeah, like one of our wonderful Tito Santana, who does the intro for us for our show. He's one of the best with selling. Pedro as well. But I like Pedro more as an intercontinental champion. Pedro could make you think he's on his deathbed. And then when he does that slow comeback, timing it perfectly to perfection. And I mean, then the building erupts. And it's like, it's believable because whoever the heel is, he takes over because he screws up somehow. And it's like, now Pedro can start laying in that left hook. And like we heard from Davey O, he caught one in the ear and just destroyed his left ear.
I love when Bruno too. Bruno could sell. I mean, and then he did that crab thing, and he started hulking up. I mean, I think he invented hulking up, and it was slow, and the crowd, like, it was just like a slow rise, and finally he made his comeback, and the whole place exploded.
Bruno was the general in there. A lot of times the heels would call matches, but not with Bruno. You're not going to call anything. He's in charge. And it was right. You listen to him. I was lucky enough to work a tag match or a match. Bruno was the ref with Nikolai and Dominic. And we were in a stadium and jumped up on the ring. And Bruno's like, not yet. Wait. Let him go a little longer. Drop me down. It's like, okay. And then it was like, Bruno gives me the signal. Let's go home. Boom. I jump up. Bang. I get hit. Boom, boom, boom. And he knows what he's doing. It's like, you're not going to listen to Bruno? Just shut the fuck up and do what he says. If he just said, wear a dress, I'd been wearing a dress that night. You call it, Bruno. So it's like, yep, Professor Tanaka and Mr. Fuji. And they go on to, I think it began, they weren't the singles threat that the other tag teams were, But what they did was on television against Bruno and Pedro. Somebody got the bright, Bruno, he would come back on his own terms. He wasn't a regular, he would show up once in a while. Then they had the idea him and Pedro as a tag team. So they're on television with Tanaka and Fuji. So what do we get? The salt, right? They're both blinded. They start swinging. They hit each other. And then it's like, oh, you son of a bitch. And then they go at it. And then it's like, okay, Bruno and Pedro, they're hot. Now they want to have a match against each other. And it's coming up at the end of the month, Benny, September the 30th.
Showdown at Shea.
The Big Shea Stadium Snooze Fest, as it was called. And we may talk about that, people. We're Benny and I got a lot of things behind the scenes. Believe me, we don't just pick up the phone and say, okay, let's do this damn show this week. We do a lot of planning and preparation.
Yeah. We work hard for you guys.
So, we're thinking about that. But that was like because somebody said with George Steele, the run-in, I've heard stories that he made a bet with Ernie Ladd. And another story, he made a bet with, I think it maybe even been Tanaka. And that I can get to the ring, or Ernie Ladd, maybe Tanaka. He said, I can get to the ring before I get intercepted. And they're like, bullshit, they'll cut you off. But I also heard the old man said, this is like a funeral. Somebody get out there and do something. It's like, George Steele, you're perfect. Your two arch enemies are out there. Go charge the ring, and the police will stop you because it's like, come on. They get this great shot with the billy club around George's throat. It's like, come on, man. All you needed was the band leader there to be waving the baton. It was perfect, perfectly orchestrated. That was great. There's no way in hell anybody would be stupid enough to go run in on that main event with that kind of a gate. They would skin you alive, not just fire you. They then boil you in oil and then skin you alive. It's like, no, I know that was the old man said, get out there and save the day, please do something. And I mean, Bruno and Pedro, it had to go that way. But I remember it was Bill Apter used to do the interviews, and they had Bruno, and they asked him, they said, how come you don't defend the belt against Strongbow? People are clamoring for that match. And Bruno said, well, let me tell you, the promoters are in business to make money. Let's be honest about that. It's no secret. This is a business. And when you put two fan favorites in the ring, it doesn't really draw. And he used the Calhoun match as an example. He said, that really didn't draw that well, but it made his career. You know the story behind that, right, Benny?
That's when he lifted him up, right?
When he lifted him up, but before that, was it Sal? Maybe even told us before that, Sal Corrente. It was Bruno started to tell people, I could lift Calhoun, and they're like, get the hell out of here, you can't lift Calhoun. And it was starting to circulate. And then the office said, shut your mouth about that. Because he was a young kid at the time. They weren't behind him yet. They didn't want to push him. He was not our Bruno Sammartino yet. He was a young guy that was on the undercard. No jobber or anything like that. But he was not the superstar and legend that he would become. So they're just like, shut up. Stop saying that. But then the wrong person heard it and said, you know what? We want to see that. We want to see if this Italian strongman can actually lift this Calhoun up. And he did it. And I mean, without a doubt, we saw Kowalski, a picture of it that Evan provided a couple of weeks ago, or was it a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, that's impressive. No doubt about it.
Oh, yeah.
But when Bruno did it, he got the underneath and got the hoist. I don't know if maybe he was afraid if he dumped him, he'd probably break his own neck because of all that weight coming down. If he's not able to set himself, it would not end well. But Bruno sure proved he was the Italian strongman at that point.
Absolutely.
So what do you think, Benny? Professor Tanaka, Mr. Fuji? I say second only to one other team.
Yeah.
And that would be the Valiants, and we'll get into that shortly. But they, without a doubt, They went all the way to May 30th of 73, and they were meeting everybody. It wasn't like once in a while they would defend the belts. They're meeting Strongbow and Calhoun, and Strongbow and a host of other people. But Tony Geria teamed up with Haystacks Calhoun, the Rookie of the Year. And when we had our good friend Tony on, he pretty much explained that to us, that they were trying to give him a boost, and it wouldn't hurt to give Calhoun, who had been very good to this business for years, give him a bone as well. What the hell? Let the guy have something. Not that he needed a belt, because he was Haystacks Calhoun. It was like Andre the Giant. Even with Strongbow or Jimmy Snuka, these are people that don't need a belt. They are the gimmick themselves. They will draw the people. They are that beloved. So they team him with Calhoun, and it worked. It clicked. And then, for whatever reason, they had that break. Again, it was May 30th. That was Memorial Day that year. Hamburg. That was the first time the belts changed in Hamburg with Geria and Calhoun. And it was like, okay, people are happy. Tony's the Rookie of the Year. I remember he had the contest with Chuck O'Connor. I wrote in. I don't know how many people didn't. I think everybody did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We want Tony Geria to be Rookie of the Year, without a doubt. And he was a high flyer in those days. That was considered what Tony was. He was a high flyer, and he pretty much maintained that drop kick through the years. That was one of his main weapons in his arsenal, was the drop kick, besides the abdominal stretch. Once in a while, Tony would throw a sleeper in there. But, of course, the women were gaga over him. We loved them. The men did, because he was a great athlete. And then Calhoun, who, by the way, folks, in the 60s, he was pro wrestling. He was on Groucho Marx. He was on all kind of things. Haystacks Calhoun was a household
Art
name.
Linkletter, I believe. Also.
There you go. Art Linkletter, a lot of things, and I remember in Baltimore, it was Channel 11. It was up on TV Hill. It was Channel 11, WJZ. Channel 13 was their counterpart. WBAL was Channel 11. And they would do studio wrestling, a lot like similar to what Pittsburgh would do. And Calhoun would be on there. I know my parents used to denounce wrestling as I got older, but I remember seeing that, and they had the television on, and everybody got a big kick, because they would say, okay, Haystack, what do you eat for breakfast in the morning? He'd say, well, neighbor, I have a dozen eggs and, all 1,000 pancakes and whatever. And it was like, there you go. It was, but here's a guy, please know this, people. He walked to the ring. Like Andre at the end, they had to bring that cart to get him to the ring. He couldn't make it. He was finished. There's no way he could get into the ring, do what needed to be done, taking the slam that he did, and then make his way back. Give Calhoun credit. 600 pounds. He walked to the ring, put the horseshoe on the post. He'd give you 7-8 minutes, sometimes maybe 12. You ain't going to do cartwheels. But I tell you what, I just watched a tag match not that long ago. He was in there with Backlund. It was a handicap tag match against Rods, Tomeo, and Frank Williams. And Johnny hit him coming off the top rope with a double forearm, knocked him down. Well, Calhoun got up, and then he cut the ring off. He was moving in that ring. He was, for a guy his size, he was very agile.
Yeah, and very deceptive.
He put the damn horseshoe on and walked back to the dressing room. Of course, a lot of times it would end where he would be cut. That was because he was popular. So you cut the face, and then somebody comes in to make the save, and he'd make his way back to the dressing room with some assistance.
He lost a lot via count out too, right?
Yes, and in Baltimore on August the 27th of 77, Patera beats him on a count out, but he's got his foot caught in the rope, and he's hanging outside of the ring. It's like, that's tough to do. I mean, that takes skill to get yourself, either your arm, your leg, or some people like Johnny Rods used to do it. get your neck caught in there. That shit's tight, man. It's not like a traditional rope. It's more like a wire or like, like a stretched line. You could end up dying from that. You could really hang yourself in there. So here he is with his ankle upside down. And then I remember, they pull it apart and boom, down he goes to the floor. He had already been counted out. But it was like, holy shit, that was amazing. So Haystack, Calhoun, and Tony Geria, we were happy. Well, they were short-lived. September 11th, not to disrespect the date that's coming up. It's a dark day in the history of our country, but Fuji and Tanaka become the very first tag team to get the belts back. Not just winning them a second time, but didn't leave the area. They get the belts back, and they become tag team champions again. So, and I believe the ending was the horseshoe. Calhoun got busted open, and he couldn't continue. And then it was like, okay, stop the match. Technically, it's like when Backlund lost. It's a submission. You win. Tanaka and Fuji are the champions again. And by the way, the Grand Wizard was their manager. So the Wizard gets his first champions. Didn't have Stasiak. That would come a couple of months later. But Tanaka and Fuji are managed by the Grand Wizard. For whatever reason, Lou did not get the nod. I guess they figured, look, we got to mix things up a little bit here. So, and by the way, when the Wizard came in 1971, when he left Detroit for whatever reason, I have no idea, good, bad, good terms, bad terms, but he just wore a black suit with a tie. And then Blackjack Mulligan was his protege. And then he developed the Grand Wizard with the turban. They called him the Grand Wizard here, but he didn't dress like a nut yet. Then he had the crazy costumes and the turban, which I loved. I thought it made him who he was. It was like the Grand Wizard because this guy's got this tremendous brain that whoever his protege is, they're going to capture and defeat whoever they're in there with and just dominate the wrestling world. So here was his first charges as champions, Tanaka and Fuji. So this, of course, the second time. But as this was occurring, a combination hit the screen. Tony Geria and now Dean Hamaguchi, known as Dean Ho. And he was a very good friend of Mr. Fuji, a trainer of Don Morocco and many others through the years. And he, of course, Hawaii. I mean, this guy, Peter Maiva, was a good friend with him. And Dean Hamaguchi, he was a tough man. You could see he's well put together. But as a combination, they clicked. But the great thing was they put him in there demonstrating his martial arts. So it's like, my God, him against Tanaka and Fuji, he can handle them with the martial arts. And it was like, wow, this is pretty damn neat. So it didn't take that long that November the 14th, again, Hamburg, that the title changes hands. It kind of was like, now Fuji stayed around. Fuji stayed around into 74, but the professor left. And I don't know, some people say he got tired of Fuji and his bullshit because Fuji would pull all the goofy ribs on him. And it was like, I can't take this shit anymore. And so he went away for a while. So then, okay, Tanaka and Fuji against Dean Ho and Tony Geria. Now, the month of November was historic for me in 1973 because I went to my first card in Baltimore on November 28th. Now, we didn't know the title had changed yet. It was a battle royal that night, so they didn't come out as a team. Everybody came out at one time. And as I described it in my book, When It Was Real, it looked like an army marching into battle. It wasn't like separate introductions. They all came out at one time, and then they introduced them while they were in the ring. And it was Andre's first appearance. And, I mean, that was huge. And there was Andre head and shoulders above everybody else as they walked down the aisle. It was like, oh, my God, this is incredible. But I'll back up a little bit here. So they have the match on television in Hamburg, and the final fall, it's going back and forth, and it would be something that just kind of plays out through the years. They got Dean Ho, Fuji's got him in the full Nelson. Tanaka rears back with the Cobra. Ho ducks, catches Fuji, and then he gets covered, and the place erupted into pandemonium, as Vince used to say. It was a controlled riot. It wasn't an angry mob, but people stormed the ring. They were so jubilant. And even because Fuji was looking, but somebody screwed up. They didn't have the belts. They had to wait to get the belts back from the dressing room brought to the ring. Because even Fuji was like watching the people. And then he got a hold of the wizard. And he's like, come on, let's get out of here. While they're all celebrating before they lose their mind and attack us. So Tanaka, Fuji, and the wizard get back to the dressing room. The belts come in. And it was just, I mean, how much happier could you be? Well, about 2 weeks later, we would be very happy because we didn't like the fact that Stan the Man beat Pedro in Philadelphia on December the 1st, but December the 1st, then December the 10th, Bruno gets the belt back, beating Stasiak. So it's like, wow, 1973 couldn't end on a better note. Bruno's back as champion. Dean Ho and Tony Garea as tag champs. We are friggin' flippin' happy, Jack. This is
all was well in the wrestling world.
Yep, the Chief and Andre were a hot tag team. Joe Turco was on almost every week with Pancho Valdez and Thomas Marin and all kind of crazy stuff. It was like this. Lanza, he was around with the Claw. Moondog Maine had a hot run in 73. It was like, man, that really, to me, put the icing on the cake for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. I don't want to get too deep into Bruno because we're going to cover him, folks, one of these weeks soon. I will allude to that. We're not neglecting the living legend. Benny and I would not do that. But when we do the show, maybe 3 or 4 parts, but as we've talked about it, it's like, man, that's Bruno. So, but Bruno gets the belt. And I do have to allude to this, Benny, because it all plays into each other. When Bruno became champion, he was co-holder of the tag team title in Indianapolis with Dick the Bruiser.
That's right, yeah, WWA.
And it was like, it's like, what the hell do I want to do this for? Because the McMahon Senior and Junior were chasing after him. It's like, Bruno, we need you to come back. The houses are down. We need you to get back. And it's like, why? I'm happy, but it's like, my God. Because that first month had to be pure agony. First 2 months. December, not too much. Because he wasn't going to have too many title defenses at the Federation. He could still do his Indianapolis thing. But then January is like, man, he's got to start defending the belt all over the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Finish up Indianapolis. But that's where he actually gets to work with this team, the Valiant Brothers. Now, give you a quick history, people. Again, Dick the Bruiser, Dubois, the Bearman, Dave McGinty. He got word from Bobby the Brain Heenan. They already knew Jimmy Valiant. Fine. Jimmy Valiant was... And I don't mean to just like throw that out there, but yeah, he was great, Jimmy Valiant. But it's like they figured that Jimmy Valiant, this is Bobby Heenan, who was AWA all the way. I think he could team up with this guy, John L. Sullivan. I think they'd be a hell of a team together as a brother combination. And so Bobby Heenan says to McGinty, get this message to Dick the Bruiser. Dick the Bruiser's running Chicago, AWA. So it's like, all right. So Dick the Bruiser's going to wrestle with Bruno September the 7th at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. Bruno was spending, he wasn't full-time on our roster yet. He was happy. He was just doing what he wanted when he wanted. So they said, this is going to be like a tryout. We'll put this John L. Sullivan together with Jimmy Valiant and see how they do together. Well, as it said, the rest is history. Dick the Bruiser watched them, and he said, you know what? You're coming with me to Chicago. They hit WGN the next week. They're big TV market out there. Boom. The Valiant Brothers go crazy. So Bruno, who was a talent scout, not officially, but, when he'd do his thing on the road and he'd see people, it's like, bring that guy, bring that team. They're going to make money for the company. They're going to be hot to work with. And he's right there in the middle with the Valiants. And as it happened, they're trading the tag belts back and forth, Dick the Bruiser and Bruno and the Valiants. Then Bruno's like, okay, I got to get out of here. I got to go do this heavyweight belt for the East Coast. That's it. I'm done. But they bring the Valiant Brothers in a couple of months later. And then the last time the title changed hands at Hamburg, May 8th of 1974, the Valiant Brothers begin their 1-year run as tag team champions. But people, I'm telling you, it's not just as a tag team. It changed the course of history with the crazy man, Lou Albano, who got the moniker Captain from Jimmy. He called him, hey, Captain, we're going to do it tonight for you, Captain. We're going to make it happen. And it stuck. Because then after that, then Lou would tell Vince, call me Captain, baby, call me Captain. Because when the Blackjacks, as we'll get to in a minute, eventually win the belts, and Vince says, okay, here we are, Lou Albano again. Call me Captain, baby. Put that microphone up. Put it up. Hey, I'm not down. I'm not a midget. Bring that microphone up. Hey, call me Captain. And it was like, it stuck. And these three, as a tag team, when they would do 6-man matches or as singles, they didn't wrestle as singles in the Garden because it was too hot in the main event. It was too hot to put them against the Chief and Bruno. And it was like, it started out June 24th with Bruno and Chief against Freddie and Nikolai. One of that was his last match as an active wrestler. Freddie he became a manager in 1974, but it was like Bruno and Chief together. Oh man, that's enough right there. Okay. Then when these guys were tearing up the television and the arenas, they said, okay, throw them together. We got to do it. Bruno and Strongbow against the Valiant Brothers. And it was a crazy ending that it was like a split decision. They went to the curfew, but then it was like the referee made his decision, and then the ringside judges, the State Athletic Commission, rendered their decision. So then it's like, well, what the hell is this? This doesn't make any sense. So, but you know what? They set this up beautifully. The month before they met at the Garden, Bruno wrestled John Tolis, beat him with the over-the-shoulder backbreaker, which he hadn't used since Buddy Rogers and didn't use ever again in the Garden, at least. So it was like, okay, Tolis gets destroyed, but the Chief and Haystacks Calhoun are wrestling against the Valiant Brothers. They cut Calhoun, and there's the Chief that he's getting pummeled by the Valiant Brothers while Calhoun's laying helpless. Who hits the ring? Bruno. Make the save on Strongbow. So then the next month, 24th of August, boom, they're wrestling the Valiant Brothers. And it was like beautiful. Just box office gold.
Oh, yeah.
So the rematch, October the 7th, they're a little bit worried. It's like, oh, shit. Monday Night Football has hit the airwaves. And it had been around for a few years. But the Jets were playing Miami. And it was a hot game. It was early on in the season, being October. But nevertheless, they figured, man, half of New York's going to stay home and watch this friggin' football game. No, they didn't. Strongbow and Bruno against the Valiants in a return match. There you go, Daddy. And it was just like a bloodbath and craziness as you would expect, and they delivered. Now, Bruno wrestled Johnny at and Jimmy, a couple different, like Baltimore, Philadelphia. Like the Philadelphia arena would run bi-weekly, people, aside from the TV tapings. So can you imagine being somebody in Philadelphia and you would get that much wrestling every other week plus TV? And TV didn't count in there every other week. So the Valiants were just about headlining all the time. Bruno and Chief, Dunkelman, Arion, and it was like, my God, it's unbelievable. You threw Arion in there with the Valiants, as well, and it's like, holy shit. I mean, you better be careful because they were always attacked. Johnny told me, I mean, we became very close through the years. Jimmy too, but more so with Johnny. And he said it was scary at times. He said, people, we did what we were doing, and I hate to say it, they were not great ring tacticians in there. You were not going to see any kind of scientific. They were stompers. That was it. Romp them, stomp them. But on the mic, none were better.
Charisma personified.
I mean, you could just say, here's the phone book and turn up the volume and listen for the next 2 hours, and you'd be entertained. Boom. And if you had Lou in there with them, holy mackerel. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Pandemonium, without a doubt. And they raised the bar on the tag teams, and that's why I say they're number one. Tanaka and Fuji would be number two. Even though Tanaka and Fuji re-won the belts, they would go on to be 3-time champions the first time that ever happened. But you are not going to stop a team that main evented in tag team matches as much as the Valiant Brothers did. Not just Madison Square Garden, which they did 3 times, because the final one was the January 20th. That's the night Arion destroyed Larry, where people were screaming to stop the match. Literally, I'm not bullshitting. They were screaming, stop the match. It's a massacre. And Bruno hit the ring to save Larry to set up their match the next month. But then Bruno and Chief wrestled the Valiants one last time. And it was, I mean, what can you say? It's a main event that would never die. I bet they could have gone 5 times, maybe as much as 6. I mean, if you put them in a cage, I don't know. It may have been. Oh, you know what? Hold on, Benny. Need to bring that up. The only time that there was a tag team match in the cage was at the Philadelphia Arena. It was the Spoiler and Lou Albano against the Chief and Pedro Morales. And it was like, they weren't tag champions, of course, but still, it's like, you can't not mention that. That's the only time they did it, but it was a stupid ending. It was a disqualification. It's like, it's a fucking cage match, but okay. Our cage matches in the Worldwide Wrestling Federation were exciting, but they seem to be like you're running away from your opponent. Whereas the NWA, it's to keep you inside of there and you beat each other's brains out till somebody gets pinned or they submit. Not the first guy that gets out or the first guy that runs away. But like there's one coming up from 1979 on September the 24th. I say the greatest cage match of all time with Backlund and Patterson. That was exciting because, I mean, each one tried to crawl out, tried to climb out, I mean, the fans were going absolutely crazy. It was just so much excitement. You couldn't take it. But it was well done, but that was their way. So to regress to the Valiants, my God, both of you. I mean, Jimmy's still with us. Lou's gone. Johnny's gone. But, man, where they wore those belts proudly. And it was like, it was almost easy. The heat was already there. They didn't have to do too much, but they just added enough, just like a good chef would do. You know, just add this little bit of seasoning there and that, and boom, you got dangerous heat sometimes. Dangerous.
They worked it to perfection.
Oh my God. And I wish there was more out there from their era. There's not, unfortunately. There's some Rocky Raymond 8mm, but not a lot with just the Valiants. I mean, especially against Bruno and the Chief. I'd pay a lot of money for a copy of that, but I don't think, I knew a guy one time. I actually got him a job at Stanford. He was working for the NBA, National Basketball Association. And when they went on strike, he needed a job. So I called Howard Finkel and I said, Howard, I got a friend. He's looking to work, not wrestling, something inside the, within the administration. He's not going to be a performer. So he says, all right, have him call, treat him like family, and we'll see what he's got. So he went there and they put him in the video department. And he told me, he's like, I said, man, are you kidding me? You're in the fucking vault. He said, yeah, but it's not what you think it is. I said, what are you talking about? He said, things are mislabeled. It's like the library, the public library. People have taken things out. They didn't bring them back. I'm like, don't tell me this. I'm hoping some of the gems are in there someplace. I want them to come out one day. And he's like, I don't think so. There's a few things that have been found over the years, like the Mongols beating Rivera and Marino. I never thought we'd see that in its entirety. No commentary, of course, just the straight out, there's the shot of the match. That's fine. I was happy to get that. And a few other little gems here and there, but not like we think, like every card, like when they were on HBO, which started June the 30th of 73, not every card was taped. Backlund against Superstar was not shown on the home box office, but they did tape it because they knew by that point they had learned a lesson from Bruno and Stasiak and Morales and Stasiak. You better tape the fucking title match because people are going to want to see that. And we're lucky that they had Koloff and Bruno and Morales against Koloff. Otherwise, that would have really been sad, but thankfully those were taped. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of footage on the Valiant Brothers, but they live here and they live here.
In there, yeah, absolutely.
So they go on, and it's like, man, who the hell's going to beat these guys? Well, here comes Dominic Denucci and Victor Rivera, two names that were no strangers to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. But they definitely, that when they put them together, they were popular, without a doubt, because it's like, hey, we love Dominic, and you got to give Dominic credit. That you and I personally got to know Dominic through the years. Great guy, wonderful person. I never met Victor, but he was like, I'm going to say like the bastard stepchild, okay, as the term is used. Victor, to me, should have been, he should have done, I think he should have done what Pedro done. And actually, we explored this under Pedro. And maybe one day, I think we're going to try to team up with Dr. Mike Lano. He knows a lot about Victor. I think we're going to do a show about Victor Rivera and bring in probably Evan and Dr. Mike. And,
sounds good.
Get the bulldozer out and let's dig. But it's like Victor, I think he had his demons, as in this case here. He and Dominic, okay, they beat the Valiants. And it's like, what? Before that, they beat the Valiants. So it's like May 13th of 75. But then Victor decides he's going to give this IWA a try. Now, for the people that don't know, it was Neil Mascaris. They made him champion. Ivan Koloff, Bulldog Brower. I think Tex McKenzie may have even been a part of it. This was in New Jersey. They were running out of the Roosevelt Stadium. Very nice facility, very famous arena. Problem is, you're outside. They got rained on a couple of times, but they couldn't get TV because the old man, Vince Sr., and the Worldwide, and Phil Zacco and Gilzenberg, they shut them down. Without television, you ain't going anywhere. You definitely are dead in the water. There is nothing that I mean, how people are going to know where you are, especially back then. Well, you maybe plug here and there with a commercial, but it's not like a weekly television show where you can develop angles. It's just not going to work, which a lot of independent promoters have found out over the years, who said, well, I ran an ad on Raw and, I put ads on the net. And it's like, it don't mean shit. You end up losing your ass. And I've witnessed a lot of people losing their ass to the tune of tears. And it's like, yeah, how the hell did you promote this thing? What did you think? They were going to get a crystal ball or something? And I was like, oh, yeah, well, we should go here tonight. Evan and I, that's another show we could have. It's like, man, oh, man, the things we've seen over the years where people just, you think it's because you say, I got a wrestling show and you put up 10 posters, you're going to fill the house. And it's like, and you got a payroll that's $30,000. You better sell a lot of tickets, baby.
Oh, yeah.
So Dominic and Victor, very popular, but Victor tries to go, and it was well done how they made the break, where Victor said not his manager, but his lawyer told him he should concentrate on the world championship. Of course, at the time, it was Bruno, and it's like, you're not going to have Victor against Bruno. So what they did was, he said, well, I should concentrate on a world championship. So I'm going to fulfill some of the commitments, but I'm going to let Dominic pick a partner. Dominic picks Irish Pat Barrett. And it's like, really? I mean, well, Chief was leaving. That would have been an obvious choice. Chief was heading to Georgia. So it was like, you can't use Strongbow. But Tony was around. You could probably anybody, but not Pat Barrett. But they did it. So I was like, son of a bitch. Really? First of all, at that time as fans, we didn't know that Pat Barrett had been around forever and that he'd been a star in the 60s, early 60s in Madison Square Garden. He had done a lot through the years, but it just wasn't clicking. It's like, nobody
not with us.
Nah, us. And that's why I always put it in capital letters when I mention stuff on my page, us. It's us, the wrestling fans. It wasn't there. I mean, yeah, he did that goofy thing, the cannonball, and it's like, okay, that's nice. But he looks like a midget, especially when the next team comes in, the Blackjacks. Mulligan and Lanza, neither a stranger to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Blackjack Lanza, one of the few that was managed by all three wise men of the East. That's amazing, because his run in 1982, Freddie would manage him. He already had the Wizard. He was the Wizard's first protege, and then now Lou's got them. But I love the way that formation came about. Now, this was before Pat Barrett. They were wrestling, I believe it was June the 1st of 75. They were wrestling Denucci and Rivera and Hamburg on All-Star Wrestling. They didn't have a manager yet, the Blackjacks. And I mean, it was a wild match. I got a copy of it. I love it. In the middle of the match, Lanza runs back to the dressing room, comes back with Lou Albano. Rocco was still doing the commentary. He hadn't died yet. So, I mean, they're like, what is this? Vince, Antonino, what do you think? He's like, I don't know, General. This is the crazy people here. I don't know what's going to happen. So then Lou comes up to the table. I got them, baby. They're mine. They're mine. Now they're mine. And Lou kept doing that throughout the rest of the broadcast. But then, of course, he gets involved in the match. Now they're all fighting on the outside of the ring. Tables, chairs. Lou breaks up the stairs. Nails. Vince is screaming, the nails, Antonino, nails are sticking out on the stairs. Well, look out. What's going to happen? They go off the air as all four are battling on the outside. But a true riot occurred when I'm told they had to use tear gas to get the building under control. People were crazy. They were trying to get to the Blackjacks. and Albano to kill them. It was that much heat that they generated. Well, I'll tell you, even in the match at the Philadelphia arena when the Blackjacks defeated Pat Barrett and Dominic Denucci, they come back out for an interview. They're starting to get hit with all kind of shit. They left. They're like, we're out of here. And Lou stayed. Lou, like, he loved that. He was smart. Lou knew, hey, just as long as they're not shooting at me, I'm going to hang around here. This is great heat. So Lanza was no small guy. Know this, people, because Mulligan was a giant. My favorite run against Andre was Blackjack Mulligan. He could beat Andre, I think. And I did hear a story that Mulligan told. He said, one night we were in a hotel together and we had a little bit too much refreshment and we're getting into it. And he says, I know I'm going to have to fight him, but if I hit him, the first shot's got to be a good one. And he said he plowed him with as hard a punch as he could deliver and it rocked him. But then the giant got mad and he got up. And he said they crashed through, like, not just the screen, but the glass, wherever the hotel was. It was a resort town. I guess it could have been Wildwood. Who knows? They ended up rolling out onto the beach. They're fighting. People are screaming and running. And it's like, holy shit. I mean, my God. Who the hell would want to fight Andre? Only Blackjack Mulligan could, because September the 18th at the Spectrum of 82 and a 6-man, the Strongbows and Andre against Fuji, Saito, and Mulligan, he crotched and slammed Andre. Not this horseshit side slam thing. He lifted him in the air and slammed him down. And then he went, like that. It's like, son of a bitch. Well, Mulligan was a Marine. That's tried and true. That's for sure. Whoever our enemy was at the time, could you imagine that bastard charging at you with a gun or something? It's like, or a carbine? Is like, man, I'm getting the hell out of town. I'm not going to let that guy grab a hold of me.
Even when I interviewed Ken Patera on Dan and Benny, he said like nobody wanted to mess with Mulligan. He was that legit tough.
Without a doubt. And strong. Because like we always talk about Nikolai doing the apples, Blackjack Mulligan did it one time too. Because they know he could do it. So Pat was doing an interview and he baited him. And he's like, yeah, okay, Patterson, all right, you want me to crush this apple? And he picks it up and there it was. And it's like, these were not gimmicked. These were not gimmicked apples. These were definitely tried and true solid apples, because Patterson's like, I can't do it. I just wanted to see if you could do it, Mr. Mulligan. And finally he took it and he crushed it. And it's like, yeah, if Mulligan can, just let him run with it. Why not? But if that was not a good run with Backlund. I mean, it was a mismatch. They never had a good match. They didn't wrestle at the Garden. He was brought in for the Giant, and it worked out well. They had some great matches at the Garden, Baltimore. Well, they didn't wrestle Washington, and it was like Blackjack Mulligan, God rest his soul. He prayed for my wife's brain tumor on the internet one time, and it was like he was a great man. And his daughter, Tony Nicholson, I haven't spoken to her in a while. I think she got ill. Last time I saw her was at Cauliflower Alley, about 5 years ago, and wonderful, beautiful woman, and I hope everything is okay with her. But know that Papa Blackjack is looking down and smiling because we're talking about him. But again, Lanza was no small guy. And, he had his own separate run in 73, Mulligan 71, 73. And then it was like, well, here you go again. True fiction. Because Lou said he got their contract from Bobby Heenan in the AWA, which they had dominated in the AWA. And you talk about Lou bleeding, Bobby Heenan, we never got him in, I call the golden era of the 70s, when he came in the 80s, under the Hulk Hogan banner. Nobody bled more than Bobby Heenan in the AWA. I mean, he was right there, Jack. He was half manager, half wrestler. He did a lot of wrestling. But with the Blackjacks together, oh, man, they'd rock the house. And Heenan was not afraid of the blade. So the Blackjacks, oh man, we didn't want them to go because who do we get next, Benny?
I
Serdan.
can't even look at this. I gotta close my eyes.
November the 18th at the Philadelphia Arena. Okay. Parisi was supposed to be Bruno's cousin. That's nice. That was okay. I'd rather have seen Dominic team up with him then. I don't know why Dominic was around. Why they got to bring this Serdan in there? Parisi and Dominic, we could have lived with that. That would have been good.
That would have been all right. That would have been doable.
Yes, they could have carried the torch without a doubt. But it's like this combination, I just did not get it. The only thing I liked about it was in 76, as they carried over from 75 into 76, they were wrestling Superstar and Koloff. And apparently they said Serdan got hurt. So the next month, Bruno came in. And it was Bruno and Parisi in the main event against Koloff and Superstar. That I liked. That was great. But of course, that couldn't be a regular tag team with Bruno being the champion. But that worked. That was great. And that was just before Bruno got the broken neck. Because then the next guy he wrestles is Stan Hansen. And we know the rest of that story. But these guys, oh, man, you talk about going to church and lighting the candle. Please let them lose. Please let them lose. Please let them lose. Anybody beat them. Please, anything happen. So finally, May the 11th of 76, who do we get? Walter, Killer Kowalski, and at that time, Chuck O'Connor, John Mintman, and Big John Studd all rolled into one, Executioners. And I'll tell you what. You look at them, Kowalski's on the right, Studd's on the left. He overshadows Walter a little bit. Although you can always tell Walter by his, I call him the crane, that hunch. And there's Lou again with the tag team champions. They were a pleasant relief, obviously, because we just could not stand the Serdan Parisi team. But you got to say, Walter, you know, you were such a great humanitarian. He did this to get Studd over. Let's make it simple. Just call him Studd. He did this to get Studd over. And it's like, if I go out there as Killer Kowalski, it's not going to work. You know, I'm going to take all the attention will be on me. Put the hood on. It is. That's from Shea Stadium. Good catch, Steve. And it's like perfect. It really helped because he didn't get over as Chuck O'Connor the first time, even though he was huge. And if you take a look, if you see some of the old photos, what is he wearing as Chuck O'Connor? The purple tights with the lightning bolt on them. Who wore that? Killer Kowalski.
Right.
So, you know, that was his friend without a doubt. And so, hey, they were great without a doubt. As a team, they were impressive. They had the presence. And then, of course, with Crazy Lou Albano as their manager, couldn't be beat. But who do we get? The Indians, and they were called Indians. Chief J. Strongbow and Indian Billy White Wolf. Now, before the belts changed hands, they met at Shea Stadium. That was one of their first meetings. But then after that, they were all over the federation. Singles matches, tag matches, in the garden, all over the place. And I'm not complaining that it was a perfect matchup. They all four worked well together, especially Chief with Kowalski. My God, they'd worked together 1,000 times before this. And it was like perfect, great matchup. But what they did was White Wolf was wrestling, I think it was Skandor Akbar on television, and he's getting pummeled. And out of the blue comes Chief J. Strongbow, making his return. Nobody knew he was in the building. So everybody's going crazy, of course. That was great. Strongbow and White Wolf as a tag team. Perfect. And, of course, they vowed that they would get the belts from the Executioners. Reiterate, the Shea Stadium, when Bruno met Hansen, June the 26th of 76. And the Indians were on the card to try to get the belts from the Executioners. course, they failed, but they had, as I said, many matches. So then it came down to Lou Albano said, I'm only going to give him one more shot. I'm tired of it. I don't want to see their big, ugly faces anymore, especially Strongbow with that big nose. I don't want to see him anymore. One more match. So at the TV taping that took place October the 5th of 76, this is their final, Vince is saying they need a final opportunity for the Indian tag team combination. They win the first fall with the sleeper. Second fall, Chiefs got the sleeper on again. The other executioner, he's dazed from the sleeper. He's on the outside. Lou runs to the dressing room, rolls one executioner under the ring. He comes back, and here comes this third one lumbering down the aisle. And we know who it was, right?
Who that?
Only one man runs like that. The great Nikolai, who had just had a good run with Bruno as Nikolai Volkov. He had made his return. And, well, no, he hadn't. No, October 25th, he would have his match with Bruno in the Garden. So, anyway, here goes then Dick Worley. He rings the bell. That's it. That's 3 executioners. No way. This match is thrown out. So, the next taping, they come back on the 26th of October, and Willie Gilzenberg does his thing, and he meets Albano and Vince, and he says, we only have one choice here. We have to strip the executioners of the tag team title, and we're going to have a tournament and announce new winners. Whoever at the end of the tournament, whoever the 2 surviving teams are, they'll meet for the tag team title. So, they run every week. Somebody's meeting somebody else, and then it comes down on December the 7th, another famous day in history. December the 7th. Those are the executioners. They got eliminated. It was Volkov and Tor Kamata. And I never felt like they gave Tor Kamata his due. I don't think he was actually used properly. I really don't see that. But it was a nice teaming with Nikolai. But then again, how in the hell could Kamata follow Fuji and Tanaka? And they weren't that far off in the horizon to make a return. So he didn't get a big push, per se. I don't think he ever wrestled Bruno. I don't think he ever wrestled. He was lucky to get mid-card matches. This was his greatest hurrah, being in the tag team finals with Nikolai against the Indians. So they win the match. The Indians and the new champions, they win it the 3rd hour, which, coincidentally, WOR was shown Christmas night, 1976. And as I've said so many times, and I'm going to repeat myself, WOR Championship Wrestling was the infomercial for Madison Square Garden, because everything that was strategically placed would fall into line to line up with the next Garden show, either that Monday or 2 weeks away, but it would either be a match that's going to be held at the Garden, or they could make the announcement on the upcoming card for the next one, and it would have some merit to it that people would want to buy the tickets and come. So their first go around at the Garden was Ken Patera's first night against Bruno, and it was a brutal night. I believe that was a January 20th as well of 77. And it wasn't so much snow as frigid temperatures. And I mean, when I was on my way to work at that time, I was a younger guy taking the bus. You could see the Potomac was frozen. It's like, it was just crazy brutal that January. And that's the story I tell, where the old man said to Bruno, Patera's out. This is it. We're like 6,000 down. He's like, no, it's not him. Nobody can get here. Even the subway rail is frozen. What the hell can you do? And it's like, listen to Bruno. Always listen to Bruno. So the Indians wrestled, the executioners. That was the final time that night. Maybe a few here and there, but it was a good send-off because it was good. Chief was showing them the belt. It was like, ha ha, here they are. He was putting the belts in their faces. So we want to go on, Benny, or pick it up next time?
We're an hour and 40 minutes in. Yeah, why don't we pick it up next time? That's a good idea.
All right. And it's a good crossover anyway with what we have. And don't worry, people. We will entertain you.
Oh, always. Absolutely.
Thank you to those that came back for this.
Yeah, I mean, some people stuck with us for the whole 100 minutes. Thank you very much. We're going to continue this and finish it next week. To those of you out there on Want Radio, thank you for listening. If you're listening later on Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, etc., thank you for listening there. We're worldwide, Nikita. I think we've been listened to, on 4 or 5 continents now.
That's perfect for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation remembrance. So that's great. We should be worldwide.
Absolutely. So
look at it as a rematch, people. From what we did before, this is the return match.
As Yogi would say, it's deja vu all over again. So for the great Nikita Breznikov, this is Benny Scala, the one and only Playa, the poet laureate of the Playa Entertainment Network, leaving you with this. Oh, how we loved those great tag teams. They were so important to us, but now it seems the teams of today have zero appeal. That's why we talk about when it was real. Night, folks.
До свидания, товарищ.